everyone, to Witty Conversations. I'm Kayla, the host of the show, and on today's show, we have Marcia Burt with us. Marcia, welcome to the show, and thank you for being here with us.
Thank you, Kayla. I'm really glad to be here with you.
Awesome. Well, Marcia is an enrollment director at the OTA Houston Center, and so we're super excited to learn from her some of her experience as an enrollment director. Prior to that, she was also in senior living, and I mentioned that specifically because it influences a lot of what she does as an enrollment director at the OTA Houston Center. So, the topic for today's show is what are women looking for? What are they seeking for with financial education? And I think there's no one better to talk to than Marcia. So, Marcia, what are some of the common themes that you see among the students that you encounter, and specifically the women that you encounter in your center?
Definitely. I think if there was one common theme, it probably centers around how do I even begin? How do I get started in learning? And I get a lot of questions specifically about retirement plans because those things can get confusing. And sometimes women in particular, they just don't know what questions to ask. They're afraid to ask. And if there's one common theme among women overall, I think one thing we really want and need in our lives is financial security. And whether we're married with children, married with no children, single with children, single parents, whatever the case may be, financial security is something that we all deep down really, really want. And so a common theme is how do I even know where to begin and figure out what am I going to need later on in my life?
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I mean, you covered kind of a bunch of different cases,
Yeah.
married with kids, married without kids, single with kids, without kids, with parents, because eventually they kind of
Yes.
become kids at the end.
Yes.
So yeah, you covered a bunch of bases, and it's interesting that you talk about security because there's actually studies that the differences between men and women in their approach to handling finances, and I guess maybe their priority. And with women, it's security. So,
Yes.
we've got studies on that. You see
Yes.
that at your center. It
It's
just
born in
makes
research.
makes so much sense, right? So,
Yeah.
why do you think that, in particular, women typically don't kind of know these things? Why do you think like they've never even learned about it, or what's the reason why they don't typically know about their financial future?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I've even asked myself, how did I get to be this age and only figuring out some of these things later on in life? But a lot has to do with what did you learn early on in your career? What was available to you? How did you grow up? Was in your household, did your family talk about money or not? Was it a healthy conversation or was it kind of a, shh, we don't talk about that kind of thing? And it really shapes who we are later on, where we are. And I used to see physical manifestation of that working in my previous career in senior living. I used to work with families having to make very difficult decisions about someone's health and their care needs, a very emotional decision that oftentimes was also a financial decision.
Mm.
And so I realized that, wow, later on in life, the fewer resources someone has, the fewer choices they're going to have about what happens to them. And we're all going to get to some point in our life where whatever we've got up till that for whatever time we've got left, and personally I want more choices about what happens to me. So I think that's the case with women who come in here. They might not know how to verbalize that, but they're thinking that I need security later on in my life, but what are the first steps I need to take? And the more I talk with them, those questions start to drill down into more about retirement planning and differences between, IRAs and 401ks and 403bs and what can you do, what can't you do, and so forth. Um, so questions tend to kind of get into that area.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you don't get started because you don't know where to start for one,
Mhm. Yeah.
and you've never had these conversations. I know I tell my students all the time, don't be shy on asking questions because you feel like you should know about this stuff
Mhm.
because you I don't know why, you just feel like you should be in control of your finances of all things, right? But
Yeah.
how would you know about it if you've never learned about it and if
Mhm.
it was never taught to you, which it's not taught in the education system?
Mhm.
And why, or maybe somebody else took care of it for you. Maybe your spouse, maybe your father, you know, maybe somebody else took care of it, and that could be really intimidating as well. You know, somebody else has taken care of this for me my whole life. Um, you know, and there
You
could be
just
this intimidation factor. You know.
Exactly. You just took the word out of my mouth, is intimidating. And it reminds me so much of, like, I relate it to if I've got to have some work done with my car, which
Oh.
I have to do right now. This week I'm dealing with
So
something right now, and
it's hitting home for you.
it just sounds so crazy and simplistic, but it's not. And it's a case of, if I need something done, some work, I'll, ask my husband, would you just please take it in? And it's because I always feel like they're going to tell me, maybe there's something that I need that maybe I don't. And how do I know if I can really trust what they're telling me?
It's a big
Um,
one.
exactly. And the situation I'm dealing with right now, it's just a silly thing, but I need to get my brakes checked. And I made a call to a place I've used before, and I called yesterday and I made arrangements, and just this young man's on the phone with me. I already know I've made another appointment somewhere else because I thought I already am not getting a good vibe here. And I make jokes about it, but I know that some of the women who come in here to the orientation classes, they're thinking the same thing. Are these people going to talk over my head? Are they going to make me feel intimidated? Are they going to make me feel like I'm not smart for asking dumb questions?
Right.
And that we need to fix that. I mean, we really do. We need to fix that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm
Hmm.
blessed because we're talking about, you know, we're not talking about, I don't know, rocket science where it doesn't really matter if you talk over my head and I don't know anything about it. Does it really affect my life that much? But we're talking
Hmm.
about a subject that really affects your future and your life. And so
Yeah.
getting educated is super important. And, you know,
Yeah.
maybe somebody wants to talk over your head because they don't want you to ask too many questions. Um, just another thing, not that everybody's out
Mhm.
there is doing bad things or up to no good, but
Right.
I think it's
It's
a,
intimidating. It's exactly what you said. It's intimidating, and women, we tend to be harder on ourselves, I think. Especially if we're moms, we're very hard on ourselves. I've got a whole bunch of kids, and
yeah.
it's just, you get in these situations where you kind of go, you know what, I guess I'm just going to leave it alone. I guess I'll just drop it and I won't do anything about it. And that's the last thing that we need to do as women. That's the very last thing we need to do.
Yeah. So, on that topic, what would you say to women who find themselves in this situation where they have a 401k or some sort of a retirement plan, and they kind of don't know where to begin? You know, what are your words to these women, or you know, people that maybe are even listening to this right now and they know that they've been paying into this thing called a
Yes,
401k. They might not even know what it
the
is.
mystery. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a mystery, right?
right.
So, what would you say to these people? Because at some point in time, retirement's down the line. You know, we get
Yeah,
older. That's the thing, and we need to take care of these things. So,
yeah.
what are your words?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So I think the first thing is to think about when somebody's contributing to a 401k or an IRA or 403b or any one of these types of plans, rephrase the thinking in terms of, yes, you are investing in something, but switch the word and ask yourself, but what am I buying? Because every time money comes out of your paycheck and it goes into this account, you're buying more of something. So ask yourself, well, what exactly am I buying? And that's step one, is understanding, well, what do you have inside of your account? In the case of a 401k, it's probably some mixture of maybe bonds or mutual funds or something like that. And the first step is really understanding what are your choices of things that you can buy inside of your account. You know, we shop, right? So I went to the grocery store last night, and I certainly don't walk into the grocery store with a basket and walk around, you know, with my eyes closed and tell the employees, hey, fill up my basket. I don't care what you put in it and what price it is, just fill it up. I'll just take it.
It's kind of a funny,
But
it's a funny visual.
that's yeah, that tends to be what we do with our retirement plans. We're buying something, we don't really know what it is, and we don't know what the price is because prices fluctuate. So that's kind of step one. So take a look at your choices. What did you select? What are you buying, and what price are you paying for it? That's really kind of step one. And that's the case whether you're looking at a 401k or an IRA or a 403b. More than likely, that's what you'll find.
Yeah. I
Figure
love
out
that.
what are you buying. Mm-hmm.
Switching your vocabulary. Words are
Yes,
important. So
it is.
investing
Yeah.
versus buying, I think most people can associate with the word buying. They've done that in their life where they might not have
Yes.
done investing or think that they've done investing.
Yes.
So makes so much sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything else? Anything else that you would say to women, maybe beyond just what's in my 401k? You know, any other resources you might give them, or things you might
Oh,
direct them to?
sure. Gosh, if you're like me, sometimes when I look something up online, one article takes me to something else, and then
Oh
it
yeah.
leads to something else, and then I tend to forget where I even started sometimes. So I think there's so much information overload out there, and we're constantly bombarded by ads
Oh yeah.
and pop-ups for this and that, and just all kinds of material out there, and a lot of it has bias. So that's where facts are very important on how do things really work without opinions. And so one guidance I give to women I'm working with here is to, when you're looking things up online, and make sure you're looking at .org or .gov websites, because you won't really find a lot of opinion. You'll find factual information. The IRS website in particular has a huge section on retirement plans. And there it's very detailed, and it lists out what is an IRA and what's the difference between a Roth and a traditional IRA. Things like this. And that can be a really good step towards just figuring out what's available to me. I mean, for most people, there's nothing that's preventing us from, at the very least, starting an IRA or individual retirement account for ourselves. There's probably no reason why you shouldn't be doing that. But if you don't know how they work or what the benefit is, then how would you ever even think that that's something I should do? So it's very, very important. And I think sticking to those types of websites are really good.
Definitely. I mean, I think we're not usually excited when the word IRS comes up, but
Yeah.
in this particular case, it could be really useful.
There
And
is. There's certain sections I go to, sections I avoid, but you know, I always tell people too, the less tax you pay, the more you keep in your pocket. So you want to have somebody good who manages that stuff for you, especially from a retirement planning standpoint.